Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Helen Horseman Allen. I'm the finance director here at Represent, and I'm going to be your host for today's breakfast briefing. Today is really an exciting one about how the top of the ticket affects our down ballot races. So let's just start with a quick overview of where we're at. As I'm sure you all know, Represent is the only PAC in Pennsylvania dedicated to electing pro-choice Democratic women across the state. We've invested over $2 million over the last 10 years and doubled the number of Democratic women in Harrisburg. In 2022, we flipped the House, and now our speaker is the Represent endorsed Joanna McClinton. But she's been working with an extremely narrow majority, and every time somebody steps down or retires, life gets hard. So this year, we're working to expand that majority. We have 21 endorsed challengers in the House, including 3 of our speakers today. We're also looking to tie or flip the Senate. Having a House majority has resulted in over 400 pieces of past legislation that stall out in the Senate, waiting for committees to take them up. But Republicans control the committee agendas, and the bills just aren't going anywhere. If we get 3 wins this year, it would tie us up and give us control of Senate committee chairs and makeup. 4 would flip it. So how does the top of the ticket affect us all? It always matters, right? It always matters. It drives turnout. It drives how people perceive the race. And it's really an important factor. But also, 2020, the PA legislature passed a new voting law. That law gave us vote by mail, which was really important. But we got it by sacrificing straight ticket voting. And you can probably see it had an effect. Driving Democratic support from the bottom up becomes even more important without that straight ticket voting, because Democratic voters are twice as likely to roll off as Republican voters. So this is a map that shows 2 different kinds of down ballot changes, right? So the one on the left is split ticket voting. Who voted for a Democrat at the top of the ticket, but voted for a Republican down ballot. You could argue there are reasons that people might want to split their thing. The bigger concern is the one on the right. That's the roll-off voters. Those are the people who voted for a Democrat at the top of the ticket and didn't vote at all down ballot. Reducing this effect is really key to winning more seats and really key to flipping the legislatures. There was a study done by the States Project that said Democrats would control 14 more chambers nationwide if the roll-off drop didn't happen. If we can win more votes down ballot, we can win more seats, and we can pass the laws that matter to us in Harrisburg. And of course, this year is totally unique. With 2 different candidates at the top of the ticket, our women can offer us a really unique perspective on how the top of the ticket has affected conversations. What are they hearing door knocking, from voters, from volunteer turnout? All of these things, we have a really unique lens to see how it looked with one person at the top and now how it looks with the second one. So with that, let's meet the people we're going to talk to today. They're coming to us from across the Commonwealth. You can see on this map where all of our elected representatives are from, or our candidates are from. Starting with Sara Agerton. She's in one of our top tier races, and she's looking to move up from town council to Harrisburg. She's also one of the top door knockers statewide, and she loves opening up conversations with her Republican and independent voters. Next, we have Dr. Kenya Johns, one of our newest endorsed candidates. Kenya won her race as mayor of Beaver Falls 3 years ago and is meeting a lot of those same voters again this year. She's going out the doors with the radical notion that voters are just people and want you to talk to them like real people. Her district overlaps with our Senate candidate on the call, Kate Lennen. Kate's looking to represent Beaver, Butler, and Lawrence counties. She's also a testament to the strength of a local Democratic Party operation. She joined the ballot with a writing campaign that they led for her for the primary. Finally, we have Megan Kocher, who's been a field organizer for a decade. Her first fight was for fair education funding, so she's probably still going to work for it in Harrisburg. And finally, representing the perspective from the top of the ticket, we have Kellan White. Kellan works on both the Harris and Casey campaign and runs the state PA coordinated campaign. He'll be able to share a statewide view of how the coordinated campaign works and why we want to make sure we're as effective as possible up and down the ballot. During our conversation, you should feel free to put your questions in the chat so I can try and weave them into the conversation. And with that, I'm going to take our slides down and we can get started. 1 second. Here we go. Okay. Let's get started with a kind of an interesting question. So I had the opportunity to talk to all of our speakers last week, and one of the biggest trends I heard from all of you is that your district is more up for grabs than the numbers might suggest. Megan, why don't you go ahead and start us off? Tell us about your district and how the demographics and trends at the top of the ticket may be more relevant than the Trump signs and flags people see.
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you, Representative PA, for your support in endorsing my candidacy and letting me talk here today. So, like Helen said, I've been a field organizer. I started volunteering for the Hillary race in 2016, and I've been working in field organizing since. When I saw the numbers of my district, I thought, that's a seat I want to run for because the seat was lost by 2,500 votes in 2022. And I said I could make that up on the doors easily. So now with the higher turnout that we're expecting in this election, I think field is my path to victory. My district is in the northeastern Pennsylvania area. We cover right next to the Wilkes-Barre area. So we have that former coal mining, left behind working class district mentality for sure. My district isn't super diverse, and we don't have, let me say, we have a really low median income in the area. So a lot of people here just really feel alienated by the government and that the government's not working for us. And that really influenced my decision to run for office, is that I grew up in a working family and felt those same feelings growing up. So I'm talking to voters on the doors about these issues that I know from growing up in the area, and about the way that flipping our state legislator can actually change our lives. A lot of people don't know that Democrats haven't had control for a very long time. So having these conversations with voters, we're able to change that perception a lot. And the top of the ticket, originally, when I was canvassing and Biden was the nominee, things have just changed so much since then. And I think we're going to get to that later, so I won't really go too in depth there. But the top of the ticket, I think, really has the ability to influence what happens in my district. We are deeply purple. Josh Shapiro won this district in 2022, and our state house candidate lost it. So we're just seeing that, who's at the top of the ticket really can influence us. And we do have a lot of split ticket voters in 119.
Nice. I asked all of you what percentage of Republican voters you were talking to. Sara, you were definitely the highest at close to 70%. Can you share how your campaign assigns field lists and why you spend so much of your time talking to Republicans?
Oh, yes. Well, I think that, when we talk about people feeling left behind, the Republican Party has really left behind a lot of voters. So I enjoyed the challenge. I believe that a lot of people have the same goals in mind. We all want good schools. We want to improve our communities. We want access to healthcare. Sometimes it's about how we get there. So having those conversations with those Republicans is eye-opening, and also they enjoy being heard, right? So their party is not reflective of where they were. So they're looking for a new home, and I'm going to welcome them in, even though they may have a little bit different views than I do. But it is really, really important that we're not leaving anyone behind in this race. And we're just talking and having those conversations, and, listening to other people's opinions is a very eye-opening experience for me. I enjoy it. And, typically I leave those doors. There are people that will definitely vote for me because I've just listened. And I think that's the thing that I've learned the last election cycle is, just being there for people is sometimes more important than agreeing on everything.
Yeah. Kenya, you also described your district as purple and saw Democratic top of the ticket wins in 2022. You also went out to some of these voters for your mayoral election 3 years ago. How have you refined your door knocking strategy over time?
So yeah, I actually really appreciate Sara's conversation and approach. I think it's the counselors in us that really let us see people in these lights. So it's very, similar. The thing that I learned when I first ran for mayor and I unseated a long-term incumbent was that a lot of times people tell us what we can't do. And the other party is feeling the exact same way. A lot of people aren't feeling like they align with the way that things have happened. And in our community, historically, Beaver County has always been blue. We've been a blue county up until this last year where we technically turned red, which means we're purple because there's only a few votes out. So all of these people have Democratic core values. They are Democrats. They are steel workers. They have worked in the mills. They are people that I think just felt like their voice wasn't being heard. They're not mattering. So it's been and truly important to make sure that I'm showing up for them, let them know like, hey, you can come back home. We have a space for you. We're going to invite you. We're going to be accepting and warm, because that's truly what our values are, is to be a place where all people can come and be their whole authentic selves and be supported. So just reminding people of that and that we really are in this together. So I hope that answers your question, Kellan.
Yeah, for sure. Kate, you told me that you and Kenya go out a lot together and coordinate your field teams. You both seem to have a lot of local support too. Tell us about how the Democratic infrastructure is growing in the purpler and redder parts of the state.
You're muted, Kate. Still muted.
Oh, no. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Both the Beaver Dems and Butler Dems since 2016 have gotten very organized, and they have both been incredibly supportive to me personally. I mean, the Beaver Dems have been door knocking really since almost the primary election was over. So they're really getting out there. And I know Kenya has benefited from this as well. It's, they're doing events. We had the big blue rally a couple weeks ago, all that kind of thing. So it's really bringing in people that maybe didn't know that the local counties were that organized. And so by us getting out there, I'll talk to people all the time and they'll say, how can I get involved? And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a million ways to get involved. We have all this kind of thing going on. So I think I know this thing is about how the top of the ticket is affecting us. That's how, right? People are like, what can I do to help? Versus like, oh, I'm just going to vote. People really want to participate this year.
That's the truth, right? I hope we've all seen it for sure. Kellan, let's pull back a little bit. Can you just describe to all of the people on the call how the coordinated campaign even works? Like, what are you trying to orchestrate? What do you do for candidates?
Yeah, so as Helen said, my name is Kellan White. I am a senior advisor for both the Harris and the Casey campaign. So a coordinated campaign, from the very basic of all of it, is a legal mechanism that allows the presidential campaign and the Senate campaign to put money into the state party. By putting money into the state party, then it becomes a coordinated campaign that is a campaign for everyone on the ballot for the Democrats. So in the trivial way, what that means, if we do a event for Vice President Harris at a coordinated office and there are no signs for other candidates who are on the ballot, we can't actually use those pictures because legally the office has to have signs for all of the candidates. What it means practically, and some of the candidates who are on this call, I know well from being on coalitions, like Dr. Johnson. I think she's on like 7 of the ones that I am on calls for, it feels like. Or I know I saw Elizabeth Morrow was on here earlier. I see her every time we're in Delco doing events. What it practically means is when we door knock, when we do launch canvases, if any of you want to launch a canvas out of our office, like we have volunteers who are coming to elect Vice President Harris, who are coming to elect President Biden, who are coming to elect Bob Casey, but they are good Democrats who want everyone to win. And so they will carry your lit. They will knock doors for you. Depending on the district, sometimes we ID not necessarily all the way down to state rep because that's a long ID to do president, Senate, all the row offices, Congress, and state rep. What we do believe, and I believe it's actually a two-way street, that increased enthusiasm on top of the ticket helps everyone because it creates a permission structure to vote Democrat in places that might not always go that way, but also energized and exciting candidates on the bottom of the ticket really are the best folks that get people out to vote in their local communities. That a lot of people, and I know this from having done every type of race, people really care about things like potholes. And, the president of the United States can't do anything about potholes. To be fair, neither can state reps, but people really think state reps can. And so when they hear from you and they talk to you as a state rep candidate, or they know you because they voted for you before for town council or for mayor, what have you, they are more likely to listen to you. And what we look, I was saying at a faith breakfast that I'm greedy because it's not acceptable for me to have us win the presidency and the U.S. Senate, keep U.S. Senate. But if we don't win the state Senate, where we can, get that majority and actually pass bills through the Senate, if we don't increase our majority in the House, because I had a special election, what's today, Thursday, 2 days ago here, because my state rep got a great job at Project Home, and they had to do this weird math, right, to figure out how many days can we do this special election event so that we have the majority when the House session starts. We only have one, and if the Republicans play a different ball game, I still remember we won with Barack Obama and got decimated in the midterms, and the Republican Party figured it out back then. Let's go win school boards. Let's go win state houses. Let's go win these small races. And they completely changed the way our country works because they took control of local chambers and just made voter ID a thing, made voter suppression a thing. The draconian abortion laws that we see in some of these states, all are stemming from a strategy that was over decades to take smaller, unimportant seats to the national media and then using them to propel people. They did it with judges too, right? I've worked on now 2 judicial races in Pennsylvania. It is not lost on me that the Republicans have some truly awful people who are federal judges because they put them into power as local judges early so they can build it up. So as a coordinator, it's about really building the bench. It's about securing our rights locally and winning at the top of the ticket and trying to do it all at once. And I will point out that Luzerne County had 7,000 people show up for Vice President Harris, and the energy is there. And I think we could see some wins in surprising places, and I'm excited about that.
Yes, and we're excited for all of you. And I do agree with Kellan that you are some of the best ambassadors that we can send out to talk to voters, that they do hear the message much more strongly coming from our women. Megan, let's switch tracks to Vice President Harris. You and I talked about how the mood has shifted at the door since she became the nominee. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my district, in our persuasion universe, a significant number of doors we go to, they have Trump flags outside. A lot of people have cutouts of Trump on their doors now, and we don't have an option to not talk to these voters. And realistically, a lot of them are voting for Trump because they have similar feelings of being left behind and that the government isn't working for them. So it's really important that we're having those conversations. When Biden was the top of the ticket, though, there was a lot more hostility towards me and my team going to those doors. A lot of people would just say, first thing, are you voting for Trump or Biden? And we always try to say, we're not getting involved in the presidential election. We're voting for Megan. We're voting, for this candidate for state house. And we got a lot of doors slammed in our face when we said, ultimately we will be supporting Joe Biden. Now with Kamala at the top of the ticket, people really don't ask us that. We don't knock on the door and first question is, are you voting for Trump or Harris? I've had a couple of people ask about the debate. And even when I said, I thought Harris killed it, we're not getting met with that same level of hostility of, just absolutely being unwilling to talk to us. And we're also seeing a level of excitement in Democrats and especially young women that I haven't seen previously. So a lot of people are more willing to engage with us now. And there's less of that like political division that we did see between Trump and Biden, particularly coming from Trump voters.
Interesting. But the kind of animosity is real. And Kenya, there definitely seems to be more fear in politics these days, with both disgust and, actual political violence. Do you ever find it scary to go to doors? Like, is it getting better or worse?
So yeah, I'll be honest. At the beginning of the campaign, I also take a very maybe not traditional approach to door knocking, in the sense of the doors that I knock, and always have, to be quite honest. And early on in the campaign, I will say that it felt a lot easier. There were those biting questions that Megan was talking about as well, and people feeling frustrated around there. I do think that after the shooting in Butler County, it did make some of these areas a lot more interesting to knock, and definitely I've had to use a lot more discernment on what doors to knock and what doors not to knock out of fear and safety. Because in some of these spaces, we look at our laws that we have in the state, and when it comes to on people's properties and things like that. So some doors, absolutely, I always try to use discernment on where we should knock and where we shouldn't knock. And sometimes you don't know, because on a list you just see people's names and a little bit of data, but you don't know till you show up at the house that maybe this might not be the most friendly or the safest house to go to, especially if there's a smaller group of you. So I do think that since then there has been a shift for my campaign on what doors that we're willing to risk and knock, just out of our own safety. And honestly, I'm a very honest and transparent person. I'm clearly a Black woman, a person of color. So I know that some of the barriers that some of my peers might have will look a little different for me as well. So taking that extra step of precaution to make sure that people that might have the additional piece of racism or things like that are feeling safe. So yes, I do think that things feel different, but it doesn't stop us from knocking on those doors as well. The doors that we feel like we can, or if we get people that are outside, we'll go out our way to connect with them. And those have also been very beneficial. So yes and no, if that answers your question.
Yes, and I am glad that you're being safe and looking out for each other. But certainly things have changed over the years. Kate, can you just share how door knocking used to look when you started out in Vermont?
Well, I mean, obviously that's a more rural area, right? So you're pulling into people's driveways, which we definitely have some of that here in Beaver and Butler County. But now, we have Ring doorbells now, which I know some people don't like Ring doorbells, but I don't mind them because oftentimes people will answer the ring. And then, I smile right into it and I'm like, hey, just trying to introduce myself out here. Can I leave some literature? And hardly anybody says no to that question. Right. I mean, they might not want to open the door, but they are going to answer the Ring doorbell. And so I don't mind it. I don't, maybe other people have different opinions about that, but I kind of welcome the opportunity, because if they're hiding in the kitchen when I'm knocking on the front door, but if they're looking at me on their phone, then, that's a contact that I've made.
Yes, right. Technology is always changing, right? Ring
Yes.
doorbells.
Right.
Right. Sarah, do you have a strategy for when you're meeting voters at the door, but it's really through their phone?
Yeah, I agree. It's a unique contact. So, the one thing that I do is I always hold my lit up so that they know I'm not selling windows or I'm not there to, sell encyclopedias, whatever. So I put that up there and I do leave messages for people and I have had interactions. You just always have to be cautious because those Ring doorbells can record you a lot further away than you think. So, I have that conversation. I do try to make eye contact with the doorbell. I think that's new for me, like trying to make sure that they're getting my best side. But it is a very unique opportunity for us to be able to have an additional contact. So I have fun with it. I teach my volunteers when they go to knock, hold up the lit and then, leave a message, talk to the people, because it's amazing how many people hide from you when you're knocking on doors.
Kellan, you're right here in Philly, home to the biggest block of Democratic voters in the state. What do you think the most effective strategy for boosting that turnout is going to be for the next 50 days?
Just do whatever George Matisak tells me to do. No, I think it's we have to take a multi-phase approach. When Joe Biden was the nominee, it was an entirely different world. You were sort of felt like you were rowing upstream a little bit. But I was someone who had the belief that Democrats would come home and see the threat that Donald Trump was, right? And that it would be sticky and it would be ugly and it would be painful. But at the end of the day, people would come home. Now, that would have been absolutely devastating for the bottom of the ticket. I fully recognize that. But, now that we have Vice President Harris, we have the ability to really show the contrast, both when you look at the two candidates, right? As I like to tell people, Donald Trump is now the oldest person to run for president in the history of the United States. But the contrast is there, right? There's also the contrast on messaging. If you hear where Donald Trump says he's talking about a dystopian America that is on the decline, right? And Vice President Harris is talking about the promise of America and that we haven't necessarily reached that promise yet, but we are still fighting for that. And the way I look at it, and I have countless conversations, and it's a wild gamut. There are ward leaders. I joked around with George. He's ward chair, I think, in the 38th ward, right? Ward leaders who are open and happy to do the work that many of these candidates are doing, knocking doors, having those conversations. And it's not just the wards that always do it. It's wards that have never really done it before, but they're like, we have to win. So there is that part of it, and that is a force multiplier is how I look at that. We have a volunteer program that has, I believed, already knocked on 2 million doors across the Commonwealth, right? In Philadelphia alone, we have a paid field program that's in, I think, close to 50 wards. So people who are going out every day who are paid to knock on doors and do the message. But then it's also showing up places. It's having offices in neighborhoods. It's having conversations. We're launching a barbershop tour, a beauty salon tour starting this Saturday. Our Souls to the Polls starts this Sunday. And then what we're about to enter in the face of GOTV is just, I call it flooding the zone. That I want to make sure that every Democrat everywhere knows that we're fighting everywhere. And I think, and these candidates can probably attest to it, we have all Democratic offices for president in places that where we were telling HQ we wanted to open it there, they're like, there are no Democrats there. And I'm like, no, there are Democrats there, right? And if we get those Democrats to vote, it's a giant math problem that we always say. Philadelphia has 1.6 million people, million registered voters, something like that. 80% of Democrats, you have 800,000 voters you could vote for. Sure, that would be great. And if Philadelphia had 80% turnout every election, we wouldn't be a purple state. We would be more like Minnesota and be a light blue, right? The reality is Philadelphia hasn't seen that type of turnout since Wilson Goode ran for mayor when I was 5, right? If not younger. And so I live in this place that I tell people all the time, I live in this place called reality. And the reality is we need to rely on the suburbs around Philadelphia, the suburbs around Pittsburgh to make sure that we get this safety net of voters, and anything we can do in counties like Cumberland, like Lancaster, like Butler, to just chip away at what has happened over the years, chip away to people who used to be Democrats. It wasn't that long ago that Pennsylvania wasn't a swing state, right? And, we have folks who are now voting Republican because the economy went a way that makes them feel like it was Democrats' fault. It's amazing when you think about what counties Barack Obama won in Pennsylvania, right? He won counties that now we don't go to, right? But he won, I think it was Clarion. He won because his message was about hope and change. And government has left you, and I will, I see you, I hear you, I believe in the promise of our country, right? Trump came in, he said, government has left you, right? And let's take it back. He wasn't hopeful. He was like, let's go to war, right? Now we're at the place where we have a candidate who, because the way she grew up, because she knows the value of home ownership, she's pushing to make it easier to buy homes, because she knows prices are too damn high. She's doing something about it. She gets it. And I think that we have a unique opportunity that if we can deliver that message, not just in Philadelphia, right, which I think is super important. We can't win without Philadelphia. But if we can deliver those messages in the counties that are represented here, I never think Pennsylvania is going to be a blowout, but it could get to a point where you see counties like Lancaster County turn blue, right? See Cumberland County turn blue. Say places turn blue that if they turn blue, the House is easier to keep, the Senate is easier to win, right? And all of a sudden, we don't have jackasses who don't believe elections were won in 2020, like Scott Perry, representing anyone in Congress anymore, right? And I think for us, like Philadelphia is key to winning the whole thing. But again, I feel like if we don't, if Janelle Stenson and Patty Kim don't win, like we did a whole lot of work, and we're going to get similar results because Congress and the U.S. Senate, they're going to stall everything we try to do. We've seen what the Senate does in Harrisburg right now, where there's Vincent Hughes tells me every day, like an insane amount of money just sitting there unspent because Republicans refuse to move it. And God forbid we don't keep the House majority, because I don't want to see what happens if the Republicans have control of both chambers. I dream about the day we have a trifecta here, because once we have the trifecta, we'll see changes that would be amazing. And that's what we say on the doors in Philly and everywhere, because we know that like that permission structure is super important. And if we get folks fired up in Philly to hop in their car and go drive to Luzerne County to go knock doors, and that helps not only win Luzerne for the president, but win another state house, that is a game changer. And then we can really change the outlook of our Commonwealth for the positive.
Thanks, Kellan. That was a great summary. And obviously, Represent PA wholeheartedly agrees. And that is why we are pouring support into our women across the state, into districts, you know, blue, purple, and red, so that they are getting out and getting this message to Democratic voters across the Commonwealth. Okay, let's do a quick speed round. So what topic or policy do you find is best received at the door? We'll go Megan, Kate, Kenya, Sara.
For me, I'd say election reform. I signed a term limits pledge, and I love to bring it up in my persuasion universe. People are really receptive to it, and I think people generally want term limits.
Well, obviously for me, I'm still bringing up women's reproductive rights because that really is a concern, especially for people like myself who, lived through an era when that was something that was non-existent, and people really don't want to go back to that. And that is very important with, voters at the door. And then the big thing out here, and Kenya is probably going to mention this as well, is we have that huge concern with the train derailment over in Ohio. And we talk about good regulation and the environment. And that's huge, because both Butler and Beaver County, a train track is within a couple miles of almost everybody that lives here.
Kenya?
Yeah. Two big things that come up for me at the doors really are infrastructure. I can turn around and look at the streets, like, Kellan was saying, I can turn around and look at how bad infrastructure is in southwestern Pennsylvania. And people get it. We feel it directly. In addition to that, is also education. The educational reform is a huge piece and a huge talking piece. We need to understand what this legislation is going to be like. We need to understand what the difference is going to look like in our communities, and how we're going to equitably fund our education for our future generations and our current generations. So
awesome. Sara?
So they've hit them. We're talking about women's rights. That's number one on the doors. People are always concerned about that, making sure that we're protecting a woman's ability to choose. And then public education falls right behind there, because, just like Kellan had talked about, the school boards have decimated, and we need to make sure that we are at least funding those public education systems to make sure that education across the state is fair for all kids, regardless of their zip code.
Awesome. Okay. Since we've talked so much about door knocking, another speed question. What do you feel like is the biggest myth about door knocking? And we'll go backwards this time. So Sara, you're up first.
I think the biggest myth is that people are going to be mean to you. I have been door knocking for 5 years now, and very few and far between are people rude. If they don't want me to be there, I just simply leave. But I think it's a lot of fun, and having those conversations. Of course, we avoid those places that look like they're not going to have a good conversation, especially if you're a new knocker. But going out there, people just want to be heard. And I think that has been the biggest myth, is that it's scary.
Kenya?
yeah, and I would agree that's a big myth, and that you have to get it right. A lot of times we're like, I need to read this script, I need to be perfect. But honestly, and like I said, I'm non-traditionalist, so please take that with a grain of salt. I tell people, these are things that you need to have in your mind, but don't read a script. Make it your own. Make yourself feel comfortable. Own it. Like, talk about the things that align with the campaign, but also align with the values that you that are making you come out here and knock doors. And it really does take that anxiety off. That, like, if I say something wrong, I'm going to get it wrong. So that's my approach.
Awesome. Kate?
Yes, I get my energy from people. So talking to people at the door, I mean, that's really, excuse me, what keeps me going. And you do hear viewpoints. You might knock on a door with some kind of a preconceived notion, and the person who answers the door is going to tell you a whole different story. And I will just tell you a little humorous thing the other night, though, about door knocking being scary. If we're in an urban area, which I was the other night, we kind of sneak each side of the street, right? So I came up to this house and it was set pretty far back from the street. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. She's not right on the street. So I'm walking, it was a 7-year-old woman. And as I get closer to the house, I'm like, does anybody live here? This seems kind of abandoned. And then there's like a sunroom that leads into her home, and it was all kind of disheveled. And I'm like, my partner doesn't know where I am. And I'm like, I'm probably going to die in this room and no one's going to know. But I could see somebody was in there. So I knock on the door and she comes around and she opens the door, and she was the cat woman that JD Vance was talking about, but she was so happy to see me. And I'm glad I made the effort, even though for about 30 seconds, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get out of there. But she was so happy, right? I think everybody can probably agree with that. When we knock on doors, especially in areas that are red, Democrats are so happy to see us because then they don't feel alone. And I'm like, please, you're not alone, because we have a list, right? I will tell them, you are not alone. There's more people here than you think. And for me, that's boosting them up and getting them out.
And Megan?
I would say the biggest myth about door knocking is that Republicans don't want Democrats knocking on their doors. A lot of times will talk to people who will say, I'm a Republican, you don't want to talk to me. And I'm like, no, I do want to talk to you. And then we have great conversations. So yeah, we have this like party divide, but if somebody's willing to give you the chance to get past that, sometimes you just have really great conversations, and Republicans are really happy that we did stop by.
Awesome. We did have some questions in the chat. First off, and I'll just open this up to anyone who wants to take a crack at it. Given the huge gender gap shown in the recent polls, does it make sense to adopt a strategy to just reach out to women?
I want to tell a story. So I've been knocking doors in one of my harder areas, and I have had women answer the doors and tell me how their husbands are voting, which is a very different experience than I had the last time I ran. So I don't know if necessarily we need to leave the men behind, because what I'm finding is when I do get a dad at the door, and this happened last weekend, he said, I'm a father of 3 daughters. It is so important to me that I vote correctly and that I vote to make sure I protect their rights. So although we have a girl power moment, I just don't think we should leave the men behind, because there are some really good allies out there and we need to do them. So we just got to knock everyone.
I know for us, reaching independence is part of the, our target goal is people that are not belonging to either party. And oftentimes those are men, and we are absolutely talking to them, and we'd be crazy not to.
I completely agree with what they're saying, but I also think that we really do a disservice sometimes with not directly targeting women, especially women that are independent and women that are a Republican Party. If we think about what Donald Trump and JD Vance has really done to the single woman or the unmarried, unchild bearing people, that is a huge demographic that also is feeling lost and unheard. And I think having a direct correlation and a direct knock, like, hey, we don't have to agree on every policy, but we see you. We know that you're not just a crazy cat person, right? Is a huge miss if we don't do it, especially in Pennsylvania. And I think it's something we've really failed at in Pennsylvania, not targeting those specific demographics. Of course, we want to touch everybody, but if there's an opportunity to get a target group that usually shows up and has secret votes, I think we would miss an opportunity there.
I want to agree with that. My targeting includes, independents, Republicans with lower scores, but I drop lower for my scores for any woman on my list. So if you are a Republican or independent woman, I have no Democratic support for, and we're having really good conversations. So we're definitely not leaving men out, but I'm not talking to men with a 0 Democratic support score, and I am talking.
That's really interesting. Kate, do you want to share what you told me about the Post-it notes?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if this is going across the state or anything, but it's something definitely going on locally here. People are putting Post-it notes on the inside of the stalls in women's bathrooms. And what they're saying is woman to woman, just like what goes on in this room, no one knows what goes on in the voting booth. And it's saying vote for, this is really a Harris thing to vote for Harris. And it's just kind of a neat little thing that anybody can do. I haven't seen one in the wild, but that concept is out there and people have posted that they're doing it. So it's kind of a neat little thing.
Kind of going back to the contrast between Biden and Harris, I think a lot of people maybe felt in 2020 that Joe Biden kind of ran away from the rest of the party, particularly in Pennsylvania. He kind of emphasized this, like Joe from Scranton, like he's a different kind of Democrat. And, I went back to my slide about our races, you maybe could see that in the support. Do you feel like there's more of an embrace of your candidacies from the Harris campaign, and the vibe is different? I'll open this up for everybody as well.
The vibe
I can't answer that. This is my first campaign. The other ladies would have to speak.
Right.
I would say the vibe is different. It definitely feels inclusive, celebratory. When you think about where we were a few months ago, people were optimistic to your face, but I think having trepidation behind the scenes. So I think it's nice now, like everyone just kind of like that burden kind of dropped off of everyone, and it just feels better. So, whether it's, an actual inclusivity or not, I just feel like everyone's jazzed to be running, and it's exciting time, especially for women to be running. I know I have a 19-year-old daughter who's just like super stoked that things have changed at the top, because she was going to vote, but she was voting with, hesitance. So I think this is a very different time.
Let's talk about volunteers. Kellan, you said you got accosted on the street by volunteers the day after Harris was announced as the candidate. Are the rest of you seeing that show up in your offices as well?
I think we've had in Beaver County, I think we've definitely had a huge shift. And I agree, you can feel the energy, like people are excited, a huge shift with volunteers. The numbers have doubled and tripled. We're growing out of rooms, getting through thousands of postcards in like a day or two versus like sometimes it would take a couple weeks. So I definitely think the momentum's there. I do think that, overall, I think we should have a stronger and better message across the Commonwealth when it comes to what we want our volunteers to do. And I do, and this is just my beliefs. I know that we think the top down, it does give energy, but the bottom up in these smaller communities are really what's going to drive the ticket for people to vote for our president and senator. So in bigger communities, yes, I think that there's like, I'm going to go out because I want to vote for Kamala and, Senator Casey. But in these smaller communities, they're going to show up to vote for her because they want to vote for Kate, or they want to vote for Sarah, or they want to vote for me or Megan. So I think that we really need to have a responsibility to make sure that we're making a stronger effort in these last 58 days to have a campaign that acknowledges the differences of our communities, but embraces it.
Awesome. That was awesome. I do want to ask a couple of our other endorsed candidates who are on the call if they would just like to say hi and introduce themselves. Elizabeth Morrow, I hope you're still with us. Maybe not. We'll come back to you. Rain Right Now, are you still with us?
I'm here. Hi, thanks
Rain, tell
everyone.
us where you're coming from.
I am in Berks County, Let me see if I can see my shirt. I've got my purple on, my rain shirt. It matches my buttons. That'll be easier for you guys to see. I picked purple right away, working on turning this county purple. I wanted to share one of my most interesting door knocking this week. Somebody's registered Republican, and he right away was like, no one has ever bothered to stop and talk to me who's running for office before. I have his vote. He's Republican. We talked about a bunch of different issues, and it was really encouraging. And I've had a bunch of conversations like that. His was just the most dramatic in Bechtelsville. So thank you so much for the support from Emerge. Oh my goodness, I'm taking Emerge classes. Thank you so much for the support from Represent PA. I am doing a video shoot next week with the funding that you guys just provided. So thank you.
Amazing. And Elizabeth Morrow, who's all right. Maybe not. That's okay. Okay, let me jump back to my slides. So, yeah, Represent is here to make change in Pennsylvania, right? And we take a kind of a bold approach to it, right? And we believe that our women have the ability to fundamentally change Pennsylvania, both through getting out there, talking to voters, making connections, but also in Harrisburg, we see different kinds of legislation coming up. We see different caucuses being formed when we elect more women. So Represent is looking for our women everywhere in this state, and we are supporting them everywhere in this state so that they can have the support they need to win. As I said at the beginning of the call, we've already invested over $700,000 in races in this cycle alone, $2 million across the last 10 years. It is really, really close. And while our last round of investment was the biggest round we've ever done in one go, $312,000 in checks went out earlier this week. We are still raising money for one more round of support, so it is not too late. You haven't missed your chance to further support these women. We also have a whole lot of ways to be involved, right? Represent really believes that this is not about us, like it's all of us together. It's all of us together, our donors, our electeds, our candidates, and we want you to get a chance to meet them. As you can probably tell, all of these women are incredibly amazing. We really love to get people out to live events because they are even more electrifying in person. So if you are interested in hosting a legislator in your home, joining a host committee for one of our events, or just coming out to a fundraiser, like please reach out to us and we will definitely get you information. But you can also get information right here, right now. We're having an event tonight. So if you want to meet Sara tonight, you can. She'll be here. You can meet Elizabeth tonight. You can meet all these other candidates. This is a really great event, and really soon, so you can get it soon. And then on Monday, oh, go ahead. Yeah,
I'm jumping in. Sorry, your slides are like there's 3 of them. We can see multiples. Can you fix them really quick?
Yeah, what's going on?
Thanks.
Is that better? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you need me to go back to this one so people can see it? No. Okay. On Monday, we're going out to Western PA. You can meet Kate. You can meet Kenya. We would love to see you. Again, not too late to join us. They're coming from far away. You can do too. And then for our Philadelphia area women, we are having, this is our last event of the cycle, October 14th, just on the brink of Election Day. But this is also going to be an opportunity for you to find volunteer opportunities if you have some energy to take out into the world. The next breakfast briefing after this is again going to be focused on what can you do. The Represent community is really so energetic, and your efforts throughout the cycle are really appreciated by all of our candidates. And we know running up into Election Day, people are still looking for things to do. So we're going to have some great opportunities to hear about in the next breakfast briefing, which is going to be October 8th. And then, of course, contact our endorsed candidates. They would love more volunteers. They would love to have you come out. You can knock doors. You can address postcards. There's lots of opportunities. And of course, we have statewide things. Kellan has said, just go to kamalaharris.com. It's geolocated and it will tell you the closest office if you're looking to volunteer at the top of the ticket too. And of course, we are a PAC. So what we do is take money and funnel it out to the women who need it the most. So
Kellan,
we
there was a
appreciate your support.
request. Can you put the Pittsburgh slide back on? There was a request that went by really fast, and some people here wanted to connect in Pittsburgh. So there you go.
There we go.
For the-
There's the
For the
Pittsburgh slide
western
again.
side of the state, have at it. Next Monday.
Yes. I'm sorry. My chat is was not visible to me, but now I will go back. There was also a request to go back to the beginning and reintroduce all of these fantastic women.
Yes.
So yes, just as a refresher, this is where everybody's coming to us from today. Right? Sara and Kenya both have a counseling background. Amazing. I think it's incredible how you two get out there and connect with people. And Sara and Kenya are both currently in elected office, supporting their communities. So thank you both. Kate Lennen recruited to run as a write-in candidate and really crushing it now. It's incredible. Your story is so amazing. And of course, Megan, who's been knocking doors for a decade at a very young age. Any other slides I can show for people? And I just got a correction. The next breakfast briefing is October 9th, which is a Wednesday, not October 8th.
And one more commercial. If you've missed a breakfast briefing and you want to know more about it, we have all of our breakfast briefings on YouTube, on our Represent YouTube channel. Just go and search for Represent and you can watch any of our breakfast briefings right there.
Yes. So last thoughts. What's something that you want our listeners to go out and do to help turn Pennsylvania the best state?
Volunteer and knock doors.
Chris, you're muted.
Go ahead, Kenya.
How do you volunteer, Kellan?
If you go to go.kamalaharris.com, you can type in your zip code and it will pull up all the mobilized links for volunteer opportunities. So you can go there and see. We have lots of great opportunities coming up, including October 1st will be the Tim Walz, JD Vance debate, and we will have watch parties, probably around 400 across the Commonwealth. So there will definitely be something near you to witness what I think is going to be a very fun debate.
And
Kenya,
I think
you
those
got one to
are
add?
all, yeah, those are all great ideas. And I definitely encourage you all to have conversations, some hard conversations, hard conversations with people you at this time kind of make you feel a little icky inside and a little frustrated. Have those conversations with those people because we need everybody to show up to win Pennsylvania, and we need everyone to show up to win our races. And that only happens if you're showing love and compassion to the people that you know, to have those hard conversations and ask them for their support at this time.
I would say go to your candidate's website, go to their Mobilize, phone bank, knock doors, raise money, it's not too late to host a party in your house, to introduce your person to your neighbors. All of those things keep us going, and we need your help because none of us are going to win this election without you. It's, every candidate wins because of their volunteer team.
And now we know you can put yellow sticky notes on the back of doors in women's stalls in the restrooms. That's a totally new thought.
And it is just talking to your neighbors, right? Especially in these rural areas, people are afraid to come out as a Democrat, and you just have to start a conversation, and then you know you're together, and it gives you power, right? We are stronger together. I mean, that's not my slogan, but we know it works.
By the way, I did an event yesterday in Norristown at an over 55 community for about 15 women. I was stunned at how excited they are about volunteering for campaigns and asking what else they can do to make sure the votes go well. And I think it's a tribute to everybody's campaign, and, you know, Kellan to the Harris campaign and everybody. But it was really amazing to me that these 15 women just want to know what they can do. So I told them.
But yes, the energy is really different. I can't tell you how many people have stopped me when I'm wearing my Kamala shirt or asked me about my buttons, right? I hand them off to people. Like, the energy has really shifted. So thank you all for everything that you're doing to capitalize on that and really make Pennsylvania a better place.
Thank
All
you.
right.
And thank Represent PA as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and keep supporting our candidates.